protect your children from government-sponsored child abuse. Now, I know some people would see that and they'd be quite shocked by that title. There's probably still some folks left that would think, well, the government wouldn't abuse the children. But I think most of us today, we would expect almost anything from the government because of the things that we've seen. And really, people are angry and upset because of so many negative changes that have happened in recent years. And these latest developments are very, very upsetting to parents. I feel I really need to go through this and look into this for the sake of our children. We need to be aware of what's really going on. You know, we all should have known when we saw what a big deal the media was making out of Bruce Jenner. You know who I mean. And this whole transition, right? This whole transgender transition of Bruce Jenner. And it's like it wouldn't stop. Every single day when you looked in the news, there was more of this. And you wonder, why? Why are they constantly pushing this? Well, now we're finding out why. Because they've been making a way for their agenda. They've been trying to raise the consciousness of people, to persuade people over to their agenda, and now they're starting to push their agenda on us. And it's an agenda that is harmful to children. So, you know, we as adults, we might get annoyed with some of these things, but our children are actually at risk, and we have to think about that. Well, let's take a look at some of the developments that have happened. For instance, early in May, North Carolina enacted a privacy law for public restroom facilities. And this was in order to protect women and children from potential sexual predators. And basically, their law just made into law something that's been a custom here in America, certainly as far back as I can remember, of having men's rooms and women's rooms. And the men go to the men's room and the women go to the women's room. That's all this law says. That's all it says. But now the Department of Justice of the United States of America says that violates the civil rights of transgender individuals and people who choose to identify themselves as transgender individuals at any moment. Well, this has created a lot of flack. Of course, the government, the federal government, has sued the state of North Carolina in court. And the state of North Carolina is suing the federal government. And all of this will be decided probably eventually by the Supreme Court. Now, doesn't that make you feel more at ease? And it's amazing how much this simple bathroom law of North Carolina has been making waves. Here we have Elton John, who has condemned North Carolina and their bathroom law as being dangerous and traumatic for transgender people, with no thought to how traumatic it might be for some child to have some pervert oogling in the bathroom or worse. And some businesses have decided they're going to pull out of the state in protest of this law. They're trying to make it as hard as possible for North Carolina to stand by this simple law meant to protect women and children in public restroom facilities. When you look up north, For instance, in New York City, in liberal communities, where, of course, the laws are a lot more up to date with the LGBT community, and they've passed laws there allowing gender identity or gender expression. So, for instance, if today I'm feeling like a woman, then, I can use the woman's room. 5 minutes from now, when I'm feeling like a man, I can use the men's room. Gender expression. Not tied to anything of any reality. And this has been upsetting some of the liberals in New York. It mentions here in one place there is a swim team of girls 7 to 18 years old. And they normally use the Parks Department swimming pool. This ordinance went into effect, and it says that these girls became concerned when they saw a bearded individual in the women's changing room. And we can imagine that would be upsetting for them. And we wonder, why is the government putting children at risk? Since these events happened, the federal government has now put forward more requirements on the states regarding the schools. And I have a little clip about that.
Let's go to the White House, where Fox News correspondent Leland Vittert standing by. Now, President Obama, through the Justice and Education Departments, has ordered all public schools in America, Leland, to allow any transgendered person access to any bathroom or shower. Do I have it right?
You have it right, Bill, and there's more. Any bathroom, any locker room facility, and also, let's just say you're a young man heading off to college next year. According to these guidelines that have been sent out by the Department of Justice, any young man can say, hey, look, I identify myself as a woman, and therefore I would like to be in an all-girls dorm at school when I show up next year. This could change everything, and the administration is basing it all on Title IX. What's interesting is when you read Title IX, of the Civil Rights Act, it doesn't say anything at all about gender identity or transgender. It simply talks about gender discrimination. So they are essentially reading into this transgender protection out of Title IX and creating a whole new class of protected people.
The collective, real transgendered people, those who are actually in medical, the process, is 0.3% of the population, Leland. I mean, it's very, very, very small.
Well, exactly, tiny.
Right.
Tiny. And there's so many school districts who are now saying, we don't have this problem, and suddenly you've created a huge issue for me, Mr. President.
And now their wise guys are going to go in, and you know that'll happen. But this is not a law. Everybody should understand it. This is the Justice Department and the Education Department telling the schools, you better do it, or what?
Well, essentially, the threat here is that the federal government, if you don't comply with Title IX, can go after your funding. They can pull all the federal dollars that head into your elementary school or middle school or anything like that. The courts, though, have not really weighed in on this issue. Does Title IX protect transgender students? So you can imagine that if at some point the administration tries to withhold funding...
Yeah, but it's not even transgendered students. It's people who identify with. So, as you said, it could be anybody on any day. I'm feeling like a Pam. I'm going in this locker room. I don't want to make light of it, but it does seem to be a chaotic situation.
Well, a chaotic situation, it certainly is. But surely the schools will stand their ground against this for the sake of the kids, right? We have to remember a lot of money is involved here. And actually, it's quite surprising what has happened. The teachers' organizations, including the National PTA and the National Education Association, are for this. They're totally behind Obama and the federal government mandating this change in the bathroom rules across the country in every public school. And to me, that is very concerning because these organizations represent the teachers of all the public schools in the country, and therefore doing this. Already, many school districts have announced that they are complying with these rules. So in public schools all across this country, this is now what the reality is, that essentially any male who claims that he's feeling like a female can go into any female's restroom or locker or shower room. And this is just outrageous, I feel, for the girls in school. Well, do I feel that way because I'm a prude? Do I feel that way because I'm one of those Bible-believing people, and of course everything we think is not based in reality? This is what the left would say about these concerns, and are in fact saying about these concerns with anybody that is opposing this. Well, the truth is, the science is not on their side. The science is on the side of the people who feel the traditional way of having male and female bathrooms is the right way. And if you haven't come across this organization, I'd like to introduce you to the American College of Pediatricians. And notice what their motto is: best for children. What you're looking at is part of their About page at their website, and they tell who they are. The American College of Pediatricians is a national organization of pediatricians and other healthcare professionals dedicated to the health and well-being of children. So these are the professionals who care for the health and well-being of children in the medical community. In March, they issued a statement. This gender ideology harms children statement. And they have updated it in April, and they're going to do a more detailed statement sometime this summer. This is what they said. The American College of Pediatricians urges educators and legislators to reject all policies that condition children to accept as normal a life of chemical and surgical impersonation of the opposite sex. Facts, not ideology, determine reality. You see, if you look at this, what they're saying here in terms of this bathroom law and shower room law, they're talking about instilling this ideology in the children through this law, that people can be gender fluid. And when you introduce this idea to a child, if they have any insecurities in their own life, certainly you could be introducing to them ideas that they could take a hold of that they otherwise would never think of. Ideas that could be very harmful to them. You know, I remember being a child, and I don't think it was easy. You know, you pop out into this world, and you know very little, right? Basically, you know when you're hungry. That's about it. And from that point, you've got to figure out what the world is all about. And when you're a child, you have to depend on adults to tell you what is right and not right. And the adults even help to form your sense of who you are. And that's why this is such a dangerous thing, to introduce the idea as normal that people can go through an artificial process to become another sex, or people can just feel like they're the other sex and be that. Here's their first point. Human sexuality is an objective biological binary trait. XY and XX are genetic markers of health, not genetic markers of a disorder. What does that mean? It means genetically, you're either a man or you're a woman. There's, as they say here, no third sex. There are people, very rarely, who have various types of disorders in their sexual development, but these are really manifestations of disease. And these are not some kind of a third sex, according to the pediatricians. This is called the XXXY sex determination. This was discovered in 1905 by Beecher Wilson and Nettle Stevens. And basically, all insects and mammals have their sex defined by this XXXY system. And basically, if your chromosomes are XX, you are a female. If your chromosomes are XY, you are a male. There are two possibilities. You are one or the other. There's not more. In the Merriam-Webster dictionary since 1828, sex, as related to gender, means the state of being male or female. So the science is very clear about human beings. There are two sexes, male and female. Now, the other issue is gender, and they mention this in point number 2. No one is born with a gender. Everyone is born with a biological sex. Gender, an awareness and sense of oneself as male or female, is a sociological and psychological concept, not an objective biological one. So, you are a certain sex, male or female, by biology. But in your mind, according to your upbringing and other factors, you may think you're one or the other, depending upon how you are conditioned in your thinking. So this is why the pediatricians are so concerned about this trend. It says here also, people who identify as feeling like the opposite sex or somewhere in between do not comprise a third sex. They remain biological men or biological women. Now, this is just science, and this is reality, and really, all healthcare should be based in reality, right? Here's something that actually is not reality. Facebook. In 2014, they changed the gender options. ABC News is reporting on it here, and they found at that time 58 possible genders you could sign up with at Facebook. Maybe there's more than that now. Now, some people think this is very progressive and honoring to people who identify in these different ways. But I ask you, really, does this even really qualify as language? I mean, if you have 58 and counting options of gender, and people can choose any of these different genders, is the public even going to know what it means when you choose a certain one of these on this list? You see, that's all subjective. It's not based in fact. It's just based on which one people want to pick. So, this is the concept now that the government seems to want to base its civil rights law on, rather than objective fact of two sexes, male and female. Their third point, a person's belief that he or she is something they are not is at best a sign of confused thinking. It mentions about these children. These children suffer from gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria, formerly listed as gender identity disorder, is a recognized mental disorder in the most recent edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the American Psychiatric Association. So what we're talking about is, if you are in fact a male and you think you're a female, by definition, you have a mental disorder. Let's just say that you thought you were a chair. Should everybody in the room now sit on you? Would that be a proper expression of honoring your civil rights? How crazy is this really all going to get when we just have to honor the delusions of every kind of mental disorder that people have? Well, getting back to what this means for our children, the pediatricians say puberty is not a disease and puberty-blocking hormones can be dangerous. Now, friends, think about this, because that's where this leads. As children become gender confused by all of this, and really having this forced on them before they're even ready to think about things like this, some of them are going to end up either choosing or being pushed into this path of choosing a different sex than the one they have. And when this happens to children, what's going to happen is they're going to be given puberty-blocking hormones so that when they would otherwise enter into puberty, they won't enter into puberty. And what's happening is the healthy development of their body through these hormones is being stifled, and their biological growth is being halted through an artificial process. Can that be right? Well, look at this. According to the DSM-5, their point number 5 here, as many as 98% of gender-confused boys and 88% of gender-confused girls eventually accept their biological sex after naturally passing through puberty. So it does happen sometimes that kids might identify with the opposite sex for a while. And maybe they're just playing. We don't know exactly what they're doing, okay, because we're not kids. But they might be pretending, or there might be reasons. You know, maybe, for instance, their dad always wanted a boy and they're a girl, so they decide to pretend for a while. Well, what statistics show us is that most of those kids who are gender confused like that, once they go through puberty, they identify then with their correct sex. And life goes on. And it was just one of those things that happens with some kids. But what if they're artificially interrupted here and put on a different path? Then what's going to happen to them? Children who use puberty blockers to impersonate the opposite sex will require cross-sex hormones. Now, these can induce high blood pressure, blood clots, stroke, and cancer, and other risks. Do we really want to put our children on that path? And point 7, rates of suicide are 20 times greater among adults who use cross-sex hormones and undergo sex reassignment surgery, even in Sweden, which is among the most LGBTQ-affirming countries. Now, I like the question they ask here. They say, what compassionate and reasonable person would condemn young children to this fate, knowing that after puberty, as many as 88% of girls and 98% of boys will eventually accept reality and achieve a state of mental and physical health. You know, as I read this, I know that the government has access to this information. Certainly, the Department of Education of the United States of America has access to the information that comes from America's pediatricians. Why is it that they care more about their political agenda than they do about the kids in this country? That is very troubling. Their point number 8, conditioning children into believing that a lifetime of chemical and surgical impersonation of the opposite sex is normal and healthful is child abuse. Basically, what is being proposed is a mass delusion that is going to be forced upon not only all the people, all the adults, but all the children in all the schools. And basically telling them if they choose this particular course of choosing to identify with the opposite sex, which will then lead them into this whole transsexual path with the hormones and the radical surgery and all of it, it's going to ruin their life. They're going to be diverted into a course where they are at a 20 times higher risk of committing suicide, where they are alienated from a large part of the population, people they depend on, where they really could die from some other disease due to these hormones that they're taking. Surely, to direct things in such a way that more children will be put onto that path is government-sponsored child abuse. Here's the bottom line, according to the pediatricians. They say our opponents advocate a new scientifically baseless standard of care for children with a psychological condition. It's called GD in the manual, that would otherwise resolve after puberty for the vast majority of patients concerned. Specifically, they advise affirmation of children's thoughts which are contrary to physical reality, the chemical castration of these children prior to puberty with GnRH agonists, puberty blockers, which cause infertility, stunted growth, low bone density, and an unknown impact upon their brain development. And finally, the permanent sterilization of these children prior to age 18 via cross-sex hormones. Can you even believe this? That this is the path that our federal government is on? And, you know, there's a major wing of the medical industry that can profit greatly from this, who are also in support of this. They say there's an obvious self-fulfilling nature to encouraging young GD children to impersonate the opposite sex and then institute pubertal suppression. If a boy who questions whether or not he is a boy, who is meant to grow into a man, is treated as a girl, then has his natural pubertal progression to manhood suppressed, have we not set in motion an inevitable outcome? If you take a little boy and you start dressing him as a girl, treating him as a girl, calling him she and her, and everybody at school does the same thing, and all the teachers do that, where's it going to lead? At what point can that child turn back and say, hey, I'm really not a girl? Where is it going to take that child? It is, in fact, as they say here, an inevitable outcome that's going to happen. And this, I'm telling you, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. We are going to have thousands more children that this happens to, because the whole leftist system is going to push so many kids into this path. And each one of these is going to be a tragic story. Every one of these children will be ruined for life through this. Families will be destroyed through this, and many of these children will end up in a place where they'll feel they have nothing left but suicide. That is what the statistics tell us happens with this community. They go on. All of his same-sex peers develop into young men. His opposite-sex friends develop into young women. But he remains a pre-pubertal boy. He will be left psychosocially isolated and alone. He will be left with a psychological impression that something is wrong. He will be less able to identify with his same-sex peers, and being male, and thus be more likely to self-identify as non-male as female. Do you think the pediatricians understand this? I think they understand this a lot better than President Obama understands it, or some bureaucrat in Washington understands it. They continue, moreover, neuroscience reveals that the prefrontal cortex of the brain, which is responsible for judgment and risk assessment, is not mature until the mid-20s. For this reason, the college maintains it is abusive to promote this ideology. Do you understand what this is saying? Brain development in a normal human being is such that children cannot be considered mature to make mature judgments and risk assessments as children. And this continues all the way to the mid-20s. So whatever direction they are directed in, the chances are they will accept it. That's the way the brain develops. So what we're talking about here is a situation of taking advantage of these children before they are actually even able to make this decision for themselves. So, a lot of people think, oh, well, my 8-year-old kid, my son, he thinks he's a girl. Well, his brain is not fully developed yet. He can't make that choice. What if your 8-year-old son said, well, I think I want to get married now? Does that mean you're going to let him get married? What if he said, oh, I'm going to drive the car down to the store? You're going to let him do that? We should all understand that children aren't ready to make major decisions. So now that the child is saying, well, I think I want to be a girl, does that mean now we're going to treat that kid as a girl and put him on this kind of path that we're talking about? Well, this is the child's civil rights. If he thinks he's a girl, to be a girl. That's what they're going to tell you. You're that child's parent. It's up to you to protect him from that insanity. The nation's teachers' organizations have signed on with this insane policy. These are the people who actually are in the classrooms with the kids. These are the people that can actually influence the thinking of the children. And many school districts already are complying. The whole state of California has signed on to this already. And by and large, what happens is the states and local governments eventually cave in. So the question is, who will protect the children? Can we really depend on the governor or the attorney general to protect our children? Even in a state like Texas that is against this, if most of the teachers are for it, then what are the kids going to be hearing in school? Why are the feds risking our children? To reinforce the gender confusion manifest in a few, that is 0.03% unfortunate kids. Wouldn't it be more appropriate to help the gender confused kids come to grips with the reality of their own biology? Why do we have to risk all the other kids in order to humor the delusion of these few kids? Really, we shouldn't even have to explain this to anybody, right? You know, a key element of any truly civilized society is that they put their children first. How is it possible to even be in a country that puts the desires of a few deviant people in the population ahead of what is best for an entire nation's children? How is that even possible? Well, clearly there is an evil political agenda at work here that pretends to care about human rights while actually harming the rights and welfare of our children. Where is that agenda coming from? Well, if you've been following at all, then you know.
Like a small boat on the ocean, sending big waves into motion. Like how a single word can make a heart open. I might only have one match, but I can make an explosion. And all those things I didn't say were wrecking balls inside my brain. I will scream loud tonight. Can you hear my voice this time? This is my fight song. Take back my life song. Prove I'm alright song. My power's turned on. Starting right now. I'll be strong. I'll fight my fight song. And I don't really care if nobody else believes, 'cause I've still got a lot of fight left in me. A lot of fight left in me. Like a small boat on the ocean, sending big waves into motion. Like how a single word can make a heart open. I might only have one match, but I can make an explosion. This is my fight song. Take back my life song. Prove I'm alright song. My power's turned on. Starting right now. I'll be strong. I'll fight my fight song. And I don't really care if nobody else believes, 'cause I've still got a lot of fight left in me. No, I've still got a lot of fight left in me.
I have to tell you, when I watch that, I feel so incensed. I'm not upset with these young people. All of these poor young people are being used. And the people who are using them to send out a message to the youth. As you listen to that song, you see all this. Who is the target audience for this video? You know what this video is saying to young people everywhere? Come and join this community because we're cool. We've got the music here. We're fighting for something that sounds like it's really worthwhile. Come and be a part of this. They're recruiting people. You see that? They're recruiting our young people to be homosexuals, to maim their bodies, to support something that's harming so many other young people. I have nothing against these young people who have been misled like this. But I'll tell you, the people behind them, may the fire of God fall upon them. When we are talking here about equity, dignity, social justice, we do not disagree with these young people that they are deserving of all three of those things. All people are. But that doesn't include infringing on others or abusing our children. It's that simple. So, the song is very upbeat. All the smiles are great. But it's all a delusion. It's all marketing. Marketing to our children, to our young people. And of course, what it's marketing are these guys. The United Nations. What are they really selling? Is it really ending violence and discrimination? Or are they not just expanding the base of support for their organization? They're fighting to control every person on earth. It is a fight song. They're fighting for the lives of your children, for the minds of your children. They've been succeeding incredibly. All the statistics show that the younger people are turning away from God, turning away from the scriptures, turning away from reality to this unreality. And it keeps getting worse and worse. It's insanity, friends. Gender dysphoria, it's listed as, in the Manual of Mental Disorders. Is it a civil right? Like rights to protect black people? What if we just change out the words here? Instead of having gender dysphoria, we put species dysphoria. So instead of thinking you're a different gender, you think you're a different species. If you think you are a tomato, must I agree? Well, that would be insane. If you think you are a tomato, will the feds now make a law that requires my kids to put you in their salad? How far from reality are we really getting here? What is this about? Well, this is what you'd have to say when you look at the reality and you look at the facts, you see what's happening. Those in charge of public schools cannot be trusted to keep your children safe and sane. They have another agenda that may not include putting kids first. Now, this is not a big surprise to a lot of us because we've seen what's been going on in the schools. But a lot of folks still are kind of asleep to the reality of how things are in public school. It really is an institutional setting like a prison. And it's an oppressive environment, really, where a lot of mind control goes on. But this is beyond the pale. The agenda is to make us, and more especially our kids, all mentally ill. Because by definition, as soon as you accept something as reality that's not based in reality, what is that called? That's mental illness. So, if we go along with what the government is doing and their push, then the whole country then becomes mentally ill. Certifiably out of the book. Mentally ill. Now, I don't think Yahweh's people are going to sign on for that. I've always felt that we need to do all we can to get our kids out of public school if that's possible. I really believe in homeschooling. That's what we've done. And I live in a place where that's possible. But I know very well that in some states, some countries, if you do that, they'll take your kids away from you. So you have to come up with a different strategy. You're going to have to spend more time with your kids. You're going to have to counter this with them. Because don't underestimate this. Don't underestimate how strong this whole drive is and is going to become. You need to get a leg up on this and work with your kids and save them from a system that has gone crazy. Isn't it great to get back to the Torah? So simple in the garden. Isn't it a beautiful, wonderful story that happens to be the truth? Totally consistent with science. The Creator created them male and female. So simple, so wonderful, so beautiful. You know, in these crazy times in which we live, and who knows how far this is going to go? I mean, everybody that's talking about this that has any kind of logic at all, they're saying how crazy all this is. Just imagine how far this is going to end up before the end finally comes. Just how crazy it's going to be. I mean, this is already it's starting to feel like living on another planet. It's going to just be outrageous before this is all over. It's going to be so hard, really, to hold on to what is real. And this is why I value the Torah so much. Because here in Genesis and the rest of the Torah, it just lays out for us the simple realities of life. And in a very clear and simple way, it gives us the truth of what life is really all about, how we should live, certainly how we should handle all of these things that we're talking about here, family life, the relationship between the sexes, societal things, everything. It's all there. And if there was ever a time when we needed to return to this, this is the time. And let me tell you, if you spend time in Yahweh's laws, His commandments, it will help to keep you sane in a crazy world. We spend a lot of time here at Zion Tabernacle in His Word. In fact, we have a midrash, which is simply a study every single week of the various books of the Torah. And all of us that have gone through that, we have found this is so refreshing to our mental and spiritual health. To simply find that light that comes from our Creator, showing us, telling us how to live. And we just want to invite everybody that can hear this to come and be a part of that. The world is going crazy, but there is sanity. And you find the sanity in the Word of God and among His people. So this is where we're at. And we're moving forward. The world is getting darker, and Yahweh's people are moving further and further into the light. And soon, it's going to get a lot worse, but then it's going to get a lot better. So we hope you're there with us when that happens.
Isn't the world around us going insane? Do you want to return to sanity and establish order in your life? Return to the sturdy foundation that Yahweh established in the beginning. Torah is the foundation. It is Yah's standard of righteousness that He established in the beginning. In the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses, we are introduced to our Creator. We learn who He is and what His name is and what it means. His moral standard, His ways as a person, how He interacts with His people, and what He wants from us. Join Eliyahu ben David in this rich verse-by-verse study of the Torah and bring sanity back to your life. If you would like to listen to these vital programs, you can hear them for free on our radio station at tsiyon.org or download the Zion Road radio app and listen on your mobile device. You can also find our station on the TuneIn radio app for iOS and Android devices. Or become a Torah Club member at zion.net, that is tsiyon.net, for only $12 a month, and gain full access to the Eliyahu ben David Bet Midrash program archives in MP3 format. Join us this Sabbath for the Eliyahu ben David Bet Midrash and bring order back to your life.
When you call upon the name of Yahweh, you'll be saved. Call upon His holy name in the last days. Upon the name of Yahweh, you'll be saved. Father will hear your cry and answer you from on high. When you call upon sinners in the hands of an angry God. Lord, I know I'm one. Sinners in the hands of an angry God, right here under the sun. Wrath is gonna fall on the ground you trod. You'll find nowhere to run. Sinners, sinners, sinners in the hands of an angry God. Sinners in the hands of an angry God. Lord, I know I'm one. Praise on the lips to an angry God, right here under the sun. Trample on the grace and you shun the rod. You'll find nowhere to run. Sinners, sinners, sinners in the hands of an angry God. In the beginning, when our hearts were free, we heard the voice inside us and followed where it led. Years rolled by and all the doctrines we've invented